Thanks. Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Appreciate that. Thank you. Means a lot to have this platform to share with you my story, my family story, and the background. And this is a transformative moment for me, really, because for years I've been involved in my practice. Really, I didn't have any public presence, but my love is to my home country and to the United States that gave me this opportunity to be here is unlimited. It's there. Over the years, you get to connect to the land you are in, which is Pennsylvania, United States. At the same time, you cannot forget where you came from and where your roots. And with that, I encapsulate the story of many Americans, really, through generations. They're here, they love the country, and yet their roots are. They respect their roots and they love their roots, and I'm part of that bigger story. So I've been in Western Pennsylvania now since 2023, 3 years now. My kids brought me here. I was in the eastern side. They decided to study at Pittsburgh, and I followed them, and we have a grandson. So we have 2 grandkids now, so we're here. And I'm happy to be in Pittsburgh. The topic which I'm going to talk about is, I'm not sure if we can put the slide on the bigger screen, is do the Palestinians exist? We all live in a mental bubble, and I'm part of the people who lived in a mental bubble until big things happened, and with that, particularly the October 7 events, and that it started a bigger conversation. Because all along, since I was little kids, I remember myself in school, I would say I'm Palestinian. So to me, it's no brainer that I do exist. I mean, have to exist some way, somehow. And that's my identity. But what happened on October 7th, the conversation became at a big scale. And you see it everywhere, social media and YouTube, friends, stuff like this. And then my niece called me, and she is a dietitian now. She's in her late 20s. That she was told by somebody that, and she's Palestinians, of course, her dad and mom. So she said somebody told her that Palestinians don't exist. And there's no such thing called Palestinians. And her response to that question was, what do you mean? I'm here. I'm here. So honestly, despite all my love to my homeland, which I never seen, because I grew up in Damascus, Syria. My father grew up there at age 12, as been mentioned. All along, I grew up as a Palestinian. That's the identity. That when people talk with me, I tell them where I'm from, and I tell them that's where I'm from. But also, many times when they ask me, I didn't realize that, but now I see it. I tell them I'm Syrian, because I grew up in Syria, and I love Syria. Syrians. My mom actually is from Damascus. She's Syrian. So I love Syria, but I always said, no, I'm Syrian. So all along, my community in eastern Pennsylvania know me as a Syrian, not as a Palestinian. But now I start reflecting, why is that? Why is it that despite the love I have for my background, I go and say, well, I'm Syrian, even though I'm very proud of being Syrian. I'm half Syrian. My mom is Syrian. But I think part of it, we grew up mentally oppressed. It is like as if it's shameful to say I am Palestinian. And so you kind of hide it, because if you say Palestinian, right away the thought process, oh, these are troublemakers. Oh, they have, this is the best one, their ideology is sick. Their brain is something's wrong. The way they think, like I wake up in the morning and I hate everybody in the world. Like this is what even though I've been a physician for years and my job is to save lives and take care of people. I took care of so many people. And I'm proud of it from bottom of my heart, something I do because I love to do. So you feel ashamed, like to express yourself as a Palestinian. And I realized this is wrong. It's wrong, especially when you live in the United States. It's all about, I mean, I can see if somebody lives overseas somewhere and the value system is permissible for oppression of ideas, I can see that can happen. People tend to say what they don't mean, and that's kind of normal. So you talk to somebody, and after a conversation, you have no clue what he's standing for, because they don't speak what they mean, and I admit it. But here, if you live in the United States, when you live in the United States, you realize that your pride as a human being is, oh, he's my son and my daughter-in-law. Yeah. Yeah. So when you live in the United States, you feel like there is a precious value. It is possible for the American who grew up here may not recognize, but I do, which is freedom of thinking. The best joy I encountered in my life is at the age of 48, I said, I've been a physician for long, let me do something different. So I took a degree as a second degree in history in Bloomsburg University. So I remember when I was writing a thesis about the Civil War, and I was fascinated with the thinking process of Lincoln. And I was writing about his abilities to fight for America and at the same time respect the Constitution. So when I was writing, that was the peak of my mental enjoyment, honestly, because I realized that you can read, study, and then write without feeling that somebody is watching you. You can come up with ideas and arguments, and you are free. Your brain is free to come up with any argument you feel is appropriate, sound and helpful and unifying. And that's my style. I like to unify people. I don't like to divide people. So you come up with any argument, and you don't feel like you are limited by certain thought process that you cannot say what you want to say. That was the peak of my joy in my life. And then I realized that I'm a human being. Before that, really, you feel like you are just living. But when you start realizing that your thought process is free and you can say what you want in a respectful way, and which is reflective to your own core, there's a pleasure on this. And me coming from overseas, I enjoyed it. Now, I mean, of course, some younger kids here, they take it for granted. That's what's normal for them. To me, it wasn't normal. So with that, I thank the American community for being what they are and for allowing the human brain to do what it's supposed to do. So with that, back to our first statement, why did I feel like it's necessary to embark on this journey to identify who are the Palestinians? Is the fact now I feel strongly that I live in a country that respects your thoughts. Now, whether they agree with it or not, that's a different subject. But you are allowed to say what you want to say. And there's, of course, limit for freedom of speech, and that's understandable, should be. Not anybody should say anything and create issues which is unacceptable. I mean, your speech needs to unify people and come up with something good for everybody. And I mean everybody, actually. I don't believe in the argument pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli, by the way. That's out of my category. I believe in an argument that is unifying, can bring everybody together to come up with a solution that is good for everybody. So that's where I came up with this topic. And my ideas of going back in history, because you will not know what you are going to do and how you want to think about the bigger solution unless you understand the history behind it and bring everybody to understand what's going on, and then collectively come up with a better structure that can put us together, regardless how we are different on the topic. And that solution should be able to bring in all the peace-loving individuals. All of them should bring them in to become a formidable power for the common good that unify us to make this humanity a better place. So with that, I said, who are the Palestinians? I said, well, I wanted to start with the name, with the history, where they came from, those questions. What is the land? What is the name? What are the people? What is the story? Because it's true there was nothing called Palestinians as a nation or Palestinian people. We know Palestine as a land, and there's more to say about it. But as people, you can argue in the 19th century there was nothing called Palestinian until the Balfour Declaration, and we're going to come to that really. Because you need a story to bring people together. Example, you can argue that before 1776, there was nothing called Americans. The Americans who revolted, they did not have at any point of time thinking, when they revolted in 1774, they did not revolt as Americans. They didn't know. They were living in the colonies. They were British subjects. The events that happened after that created the feeling of nationalism among Americans, and then they became Americans, United States of America, which did not exist before 1776. And same thing, I argue that Palestinians did not exist before the Balfour Declaration as people. But later on, the story put them together in one box, and it was a unifying story that created a feeling of nationalism. And even that also is need to be tied to a bigger picture, because as I stated in the beginning, I don't like to approach the subject from the concept of two nations fighting each other, like the Palestinian nation and the Jewish nation fighting each other. That's not going to create a healthy platform for problem solving. We need to approach it in a totally different way. So I'm not too much on nationalism, but this story is about Palestinian nationalism, and I want to dig into it so you know the details of the story. So what's my goal? I think after I read what I read, I've been studying this subject for a while now, for a little bit more than a year. I think the current narrative that is the current prevailing narrative is one-sided, prevailing. You may see some Palestinian voices every once in a while, and before they speak, they shut them down. But the current narrative is one-sided. It is Palestinians who don't exist in the first place, and even if they exist, they should not be in this place, and they have to go back to Arabia. And the ones who's left are a bunch of terrorists, and you need to shut them down, and if you couldn't, you have to kill them. And with that, genocide or any kind of displacement or any kind of negative activity against the Palestinians become morally acceptable. And for that, you can easily see 2,000-pound bomb falling on people and killing kids and babies with nobody raise any concern. It can happen. That narrative is one-sided. It stopped the Palestinians from expressing themselves. There's no voice for the Palestinians, because no Palestinian will accept this kind of narrative. First of all, we are not crazy people. We are hardworking people who love life like anybody else, who want to have understanding of our presence, our past first, our presence, and we will need to have a vision that allow us to take care of ourselves, our families, and our future. Our life is stolen. Stolen. Since the Balfour Declaration, if you guys, this is a copy of the Balfour Declaration. Please take a copy and you can pass it. Next. It's 67 words, changed the history of the Middle East and resulted in a very complicated history that is threatening, ironically really. I said it is the document that's really sparked the Palestinian nationalism, but it could be also the same document that can threaten the Palestinians' existence. Because if things can keep going on this way, there will be time when you don't hear about Palestinians, they'll be dead. And we have to stop it from happening. And that's why I feel strong about what I say, what I need to say. Now, so it's one-sided flow of ideas, one narrative. I need to dig into and create another narrative. What I would like, though, that the thinking process to create another narrative has to be integrative. I don't agree with the idea that, this guy is pro-Palestinian and this guy is pro-Israeli. And before they talk, if I tell you I'm pro-Palestinian, you would know exactly what I'm going to say. And if I tell you I'm pro-Israeli, you'll know exactly what I'm going to say. And if that's what we are seeking, then there's no reason to discuss anything. We go into a conversation, we leave the same way as we entered. That's not a healthy environment. That's not the American way of doing business in the first place. We Americans, they think intelligently. and they open windows for thought process and able to come up with arguments that can make better for everybody. So that's why we need to have an integrative approach to encapsulate two peoples that claim the same land. I have no doubt that the pro-Israelis have the same passion as I do about belonging to Palestine, and they call it Israel later on. That's after 1948. So what I would like to see also, that the conversation should not be political conversation. Need to depoliticization of this conversation. Politics need to come out of it, and we need to approach it with an open-minded approach, a way that allow us to come up for problem solving. Because when you inject politics in anything, then you already paralyze your ability to come up with solutions. You are guided by passion. You are not guided by problem solving and common sense, which is un-American. I mean, Thomas Paine, basically, what this pamphlet he wrote before in the event of the revolution, his pamphlet called Common Sense, and that pamphlet made it to the American Constitution. So America is built on common sense. So if we're going to solve any problem, we have to build it on common sense. What we need also to do, the argument should not be focused on the existential threat, that everybody look at the conflict as if things did not go their way, that they're going to be wiped out. Because everybody feels this way, on both sides. On both sides. And that's fuel passion. And that's fuel politics. And that's, as a result, paralyze the argument. And keep people going head to head on every subject. So it should not be existential, should be unifying, should be integrative, and should be capable of extracting collective best from everyone on the table, Palestinians and Israelis. How this is going to happen? I don't have the answer, by the way. Hopefully we can get the answer as we keep this conversation going. But this is the spirit of the conversation. Now, after I did what I did, I found out that, first of all, I can easily make the argument that Palestinians as people, they go back to antiquity. So there's no reason to think that there are a bunch of thugs or a bunch of people or whatever it is who just happened to be there, came from Arabia, and they landed in Palestine, and it's time for them to get out. That's just historically inaccurate. There's so many evidence to say, no, Palestinians, and I'm going to go through some of the evidence because that's the main topic. I'm going to focus on modern history. There's no reason to believe that Palestinians don't belong to that land. There's many reasons, overwhelming reasons, to realize that Palestinians go back to the antiquity. So number one. Number two, by the early 20th century, the people living in Palestine were mostly three sections. There's a little more, but mostly three sections. 80% are Muslims, about a little bit more than 10% are Christians, and a little bit, I think the Jews were a little bit less than the Christians, yeah, I believe so, but all about like 10%. So all in all, 10 and 10 and 80. There's other small minorities like Druze and some other, but I'm going to focus on those three sections that represent more than 98% of the population. But they were living fine. I mean, there's no problem between Muslim and Christians and Jews. Yeah, somebody may argue like sometime in 18th century or 19th century, there was an event somewhere in Jerusalem, somebody killed somebody, or not killed, I mean just hit him or something really, or yelled at him or something like that. I don't think there was killing. There are some arguments like this. People, you can find always people who dislike each other and they start fighting with each other. But it wasn't on a scale of, have a question for me?
Can you give the numbers again, the percentage?
Percentage 80 and 10 and 10.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that's approximation. I'm going to show some statistics later on, done by the mandate, by the British when they were on the mandate in the slides.
And the 80 is the Arab?
80 are Muslims, and I'm going to explain what the meaning of Arabs
80s
and
okay.
yeah, Muslims and the British like to divide people based on religion. And there's a reason for that, really. I'm going to get to it also. But 80 Muslims, 10 Christians, and 10 Jews. Again, what I'm saying here does not reflect how I see the Palestinians. I see them Palestinians, loving people. I don't see them Muslims or Jews or Christians. But that's how British like to divide people for reasons. We will get to it. So now you have people living in Palestine. Those people are, by the early 20th century, they were divided by the British based on religion. And then they came up with the Balfour Declaration, 67 words. We're going to go through this document very carefully. And that documentation, this document, instigated a cascade of events for the next 100 years. Cascade of it, resulting in one, problems for both Palestinians, and then they did not identify as Palestinians at the time. They're identified as people who lived on Palestine. So reaped havoc for those people. And I would argue also reaped havoc for the Jewish people. Because many Jews don't like what's happening now, honestly. I know that for a fact. I have Jewish friends. And Jewish people, at the time when this document came about in 1917, they did not come to Palestine to displace the Palestinians. That wasn't their intention. And average Jewish, not even the top leadership, I don't think that was their goal. But they were told that it's empty land. The average Jewish person who came from Eastern Europe mostly, they were told it's empty. And they were prosecuted in Eastern Europe. They were killed, massacred, and discriminated, and oppressed. They were going for life. They want to save their lives. So they didn't come to displace Palestinians or kill the Palestinians. But then they found themselves caught in a more complicated scenarios, and things shifted. And we're going to talk about where things morally shifted, and it produced a lot of anxiety among the Jews themselves for doing something is consistent with their belief system, yet is necessary for their survival. That's a big thing to go through, especially when you have moral convictions. And all Jews I know, they have those moral convictions. It's not an easy thing for a Jewish person to work against his value system. And that's why you see them, many of my Jewish friends, they hold key positions in ethic committees and in hospitals because they stick to their values, and they have very good, solid values. And I actually, throughout my career, I had a chance to work, give Michigan, Dr. Ruth Lieberman, Dr. Perku, they were helpful to me as a resident. Went to Ashland, I was president of medical staff in a small community hospital. Dr. Kyle Farnberg, I think probably he knows you, Sami, or you know him actually. He's 20 years ahead of me, and when I was as chief of staff, I always connect with him, and he guided me through a lot of decisions. The doctor who brought me here to UPMC, Cynthia Rosenberg. So very ethical people, they mean good for others, and I have found hard to believe that they are accepting what's going on now. In fact, I know for a fact many of them don't accept it really. So back to this document, 67 words really messed up the life for many people from both sides. Now that's created a story. The story ultimately resulted in the formulation of Palestinian nationalism, because people go into self-defense and they have to exist. And when you need to exist, you have to have an identity. And the story shapes your identity. Your background, your history, the story that connects you with others, the self-preservation and hopes. You put them together, then you have people who subscribe to the same concept, and you can say, well, this is Palestinian nationalism, and now it exists. It didn't exist before, yes. Now, I did some reading about antiquity, very complicated stuff, but my brain is always trying to oversimplify things. So this gram, here we go, yep, that's the graph. What you see there, this is an oversimplification, I draw this one. Back in the Bronze Age, which is the time between 3000 and 1200 BCE, the land of Canaan. And so people in it are the Canaanites. Now, sometime about 1700 BCE, Abraham and the Hebrew tribes came from Mesopotamia, Iraq now. They crossed the river. Which river? The Euphrates River. The word Cross in Arabic, and I think also in Hebrew, it says abara. So because it's abara, now they are Ubraniyin. Ubraniyin means Hebrew. And that's why they call them Hebrew tribes. They came from Mesopotamia. So for those who argue, oh, Palestinians are not indigenous, well, we can say, well, so as the tribes, because there was the Canaanites before them. So with that kind of argument, nobody is indigenous, right? We have to go back 1,000,000 years to figure out who's indigenous. So now the Canaanites are there. The Hebrew tribes came about, and you can see in the upper higher box that people there at that time mostly were Canaanites. Now I'm going to use a term at this point. It's called Jewish and non-Jewish. Not because I want to discriminate between Jewish and non-Jewish, because it's used in the document, in the Balfour Declaration. It says define the people who are either Jewish or non-Jewish. That's how you define the Palestinians. I mean, look at the mental brain at the time in the early 20th century. The people living on the land, you find nothing about them but they are non-Jewish. So now I'm going to use that term just to simplicity. So the green color is non-Jewish, and the blue is the Jewish. So now we have the Jewish during the times of the Iron Age, which is you hear most of the biblical stories, they happen in the Iron Age. When you hear about the Israeli kingdom and Judea, that's the Iron Age. That's a period of time between 1200 and 586. A lot of stories about this. I'm not the expert on it, but a lot of things happened. But during that time, and here's what's most important. When you read the books about Iron Age, most of the story is about one side, the Jewish. But you don't hear anything about the non-Jewish. So they did not even exist then. There was nothing called non-Jewish, but they are part of the story, but nobody talks about them. So that problem here in reading history. So when you read history, you have to be open-minded, and you have to read everything in the history, not cherry-pick a population and ignore the rest of the population as if they don't exist. Even then, they don't exist. You cherry-pick a population when you have a political mind driving the conversation and trying to build an argument. So that's why I said in the beginning, you should depoliticize. We should not inject politics into it. When you read history, if you are a really objective person, you have to read history in a way that allow you to see the population, the people, whether they're Jewish or non-Jewish. If your intention is to build a political theory, then automatically you will side everybody who is non-Jewish, and all the story is about the Jewish. Please go ahead.
Okay, but if I understand that diagram correctly, the non-Jewish and the Jewish came from the same tribe.
Well, you can argue that. Yeah, let me build on this, really. Because the Jewish and non-Jewish, my understanding of it is if we're going to talk about the tribe, and this is the biblical, again, I'm not the expert on this, so what I say is just reflect what I think. I could be very much wrong if somebody knows about the subject. My understanding is if we can get the graph again, that the Hebrew came from Iraq, and then Abraham, and then he had Isaiah, I think, or Ishaq, and then he had also another one, Ismail. And Ismail became the Arabs, and Ishaq became the Jews or Hebrews. So with that, and then he became non-Jewish. So that basically the branch you are talking about belongs to the green section, because he's non-Jewish now. So this population here, the blue one, as it immigrated, at one time it was Abraham, as it immigrated, now some of them became non-Jewish, so they belong to the bigger box, and some became Jewish, remained Jewish. So the green box includes the section who is non-Jewish anymore, also the Canaanites, because some of them also converted into Judaism. So when Jews say, oh no, the Canaanites are our ancestors, there's a merit for this argument. In fact, Israel Finkelstein, very renowned name in history, he did publish many articles stating that the Jews can they are, or let's put it this way, they can connect themselves to the Canaanites. Now, go to the real article, read it for yourself. I mean, there's many of them, and if you guys want that, I can bring you some resources. But you can argue, there are arguments now that Jews themselves are connected to the Canaanites. Why that happened? Because when people come in, they don't remain pure. They mix. So as you stated, there are some Jews who became non-Jews. So they were blue and they became green. There are people who, Canaanites, they are non-Jews, became Jews. So now they are in the blue. But some of them did not become Jews. So they are in the green. So that happened back, thousands of years, 3,000 years ago. And then out of these two groups now, when Christianity came about, some people in the green who are non-Jewish became Christian. So because they're non-Jews, I kept them in the green. Some Jews converted to Christianity, so now they are in the green. Some people in the Jews remained Jews, and some non-Jews became Christians. So now the character in the beginning of the 20th century, in the Christianity, and you have more and more Christians now, and less Jews. Fast forward, the Arabs came in, and they brought with them the Islam. So the argument that, people came from Arabia, it does not stand, because there's not enough people in Arabia to cover Palestine, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, North Africa. No, they intermingled with the population. So as if and I'll be talking about the Arabization process. If you say, those people speak English, they must be from England. They have to go to England. America is not their home. England is. If you speak English, you have to go to England. Same, people speak Spanish. They must be from Spain. Same thing. This man speaks Arabic. My ancestry should be from Mecca. I should go to Mecca. It doesn't work this way. It's nonsense. And some way, somehow, this argument that I see it on the internet, there's nothing called Palestinians, they don't belong to that area. They should go to Arabia. That's nonsense. It's like sending everybody here who speak English to England. And if you happen to speak Spanish, you need to go to Spain. You should not stay in this land. So that's the nonsense we are in right now. We're accepting it also. I don't understand how we can accept it. So now, when Islam came in, there are some Arabs, but the same people who are living, some of them remain to be Jewish. Some of them are Christians, remain to be Christians. Some of them converted to Islam. Why would they convert? There are many reasons beyond the discussion of it. Many reasons, incentives to convert to Islam. I mean, if you live in a country that the leadership is Muslims, there are many incentives to become a Muslim. If you feel like you're going to end up paying money, which is like zakah or jizya in Arabic, and you don't want to pay the jizya because you are non-Muslim, you don't want to pay it, you become a Muslim, then you don't pay it. So many people converted into Islam, and that's why by the dawn of the 20th century, the community was divided into those categories, and the percentages will be, here's a map of those countries, or not countries, the kingdoms or populations at that time. You can see, this is the Iron Age. You can see Kingdom of Israel, you can see in fact, this slide is not showing the whole thing. Let me just make it smaller for some reason. Yeah, here's better now, yes. So there are, along with the Kingdom of Israel, along with the Kingdom of Judea, there are the Philistines, the sea people living here, the Phoenicians living up. There's Ammons, the Kingdom of Moab, and Edom, and so many people living in that area. But you don't hear about them. Nobody mentioned anything about those people. As if they did not exist then, they don't exist now, and they are in the black box, and nobody knows about them. So the people, non-Jewish, were really living in that section. So with that, where this word Palestine. So we talked now about the population, how they changed, and why at the beginning of the 20th century, it was 80, 10, and 10. Where the word Palestine came from, according to what I found, the literature says, well, there's the Egyptians, when they were dealing with the sea people, the Philistines, whatever the name is, in their inscriptions, they used the word Peliset. Peliset. And the story goes, and this is the inscriptions, and apparently they were proud of the wars they launched on them, the Egyptians, and they won the wars, and they go back. Egyptians usually, after they win a war, they do those inscriptions. And that's present. This is a picture of it really somewhere in Egypt. So the Peliset, later on the Greek came about, and they used the word Palestine. That at the same time, it's Iron Age, when there was Judea and Israel condom, and there was Palestine. Later on, the Roman came about, and they called the whole area Syria Palestina. And then during Islamic times, the Muslims on Arabic, they don't have the letter P, they have F. So Palestine became Philistine or Philistine. And that's why if you speak to Arabic-speaking people like myself, they say Philistine. If you're here in the country, you say Palestine. So that's where the variation. So we used Philistine and Palestine. And then the British came about, and they had the mandate, and they said, we're going to call it Mandate for Palestine. And the land now between the river and the sea, the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, that's called Palestine. And now this is a new political unit that the British, which we're going to see in a few minutes, they are tasked to develop. And let me tell you, they are tasked to develop, and they did a very lousy job. This is a map from, I'm not sure how clear it is. This is a map from the Ottoman times. And the writing on it is in Arabic letters. So I'm going to zoom through it when I show you something. When you zoom into it, and if you read Arabic, that word here is called Philistine. It's in one of the maps from Ottoman's times. So the word was used for all this period of time before the mandate. And that was a surprise to me, by the way. I thought the name came about with the British mandate. Also, from genetic perspective, there's a lot of genetics. You don't hear much about it now. And there's an article I read because the genetic community really did not want to politicize their findings. And their findings was inconsistent with the political narrative. So you don't hear much about the genetic connectivity and why. And just not talk about it. This is one study about genetics, and I put the resource, and there are very reputable writers in it. The original, and the slides will be available for you. You see the name Israel Frankenstein. He's one of the sources I rely a lot on. I mean, he is well renowned internationally. He's Israeli. He works in Tel Aviv or Haifa University. He had many books, and he's an authority. And he's in this study. And now this study, the abbreviation and my understanding about it, I'm not a genetic specialist, so I tell you what I understood. And this is the part, and that's how I do it. They do it. They go and they look at the skeleton, and from skeleton they extract the DNA. And with that, they will be able to tell the DNA how it was back during the Iron Age. Remember I told the Iron Age, that's the time when the Canaanites were about, the biblical stories and stuff. From those people, they were able to extract the DNA and see what kind of DNA did they carry. Now, they went and compared the DNA to current DNA, people living in that area. And say, okay, how would that connect? Well, they found out that for the Palestinians, it was a 90% match. So Palestinians are not from Arabia, quote unquote. It's because they speak Arabic. No, they are from indigenous for that land. There's a match. 90% of their genetics goes back to the Canaanites. Now, but also, the Jews have a claim. if you look at the Iranian Jews, they are also 90%. So this genetic argument can go both ways. Depending on your political affiliation, you pick up what you want. So that's why they were out. We don't like that. Nobody likes it anymore. I mean, the Palestinians don't like it because tell them the Jews have something to do with this land. And the Jews don't like it because telling them Palestinians have a lot to do with the Canaanites. And the truth is, they are from the same origin. It's the Canaanites. Yeah. Now, even the European Jews, now they will say here, oh, they are not. Can we get the slide again? Yeah. Let's look at the English people first, right? How much they connect to Canaanites? Even less than 10%, 5%. By accident, a Palestinian was walking by, get married, and has some few kids. So, or Canaanite, actually, we don't want to say even Palestinian. Could be Jews with his, right? Can be. But when it comes to the Ashkenazi Jews, they do carry 60% of their genes from the Canaanites. So even though with this thousands of years they went to Europe, they mixed with the European, they still have some connection to the Canaanites. And we should not deny that, really. We should not go and say, oh, we have nothing to do with. No, it's a land that happened to really have a lot of people who didn't like each other or liked each other or lived or fight or whatever it is. But they have connection with the land. Everybody have connection with the land. So let's take it from that end. So now with this, what happened in the beginning of the 20th century? This statistics, and I took it as it is. It's just copy paste. That's why you see that it is like typewriter, the old way. It's done by the British government. Like when they took the mandate on Palestine, this is like sometime in 1920s. They went to the Ottoman documentations and published statistics to see how the population is. And as I said, the British love to say, oh, this is Christians, this is Muslims, this is Jews, and I'll tell you why in a second later on. And they said, okay, that is the population. This is an underestimation, by the way. I think it's an underestimation. Why I think so? Because there's no way there's only 162 Shiite Muslim in Palestine. I mean, what small, I mean, that cannot be true to me. And if that's not accurate, then the whole thing is inaccurate. But it can give you an idea how was the population. But with that, you can see that there are a bit more Christians than Jews. So if you go with the 10, 10, and 80, you're somewhat close, just for simplicity. Now, where are you going with this? We mentioned at this point, being Arabic does not make you from Arabia. And if you believe this way, then all the English-speaking people should go to England, all Spanish people should go to Spain. And many were also descendants of local pre-Islamic population. I think we went through that with the graph. Arab in this context is primarily a linguistic, cultural, and political identity, not a strict racial or genetic category. So you say somebody is Arabic. That does not make them, another one is Arabic. Like my uncle has blue eyes. My father has brown skin. Both Arabs. Both are Arabs because they speak Arabic. And the same thing is with English. You can see both eyes. So this is not a racial thing, really. It's more of a cultural thing. Being Arab meant belonging to a shared language and culture rather than a single homogeneous ethnic origin. Now, Palestinian, the Aramic, the languages, just quickly about the language. When many languages really were in the area, but what's most important, I want to emphasize the Aramic and the Arabic. Aramaic is Syriac also, the same language, but people converted from they were pagans. The Aramean or Aramic were pagans. When they became Christians, they became Syriac. And I'm not very, I think you probably know that more than I do here. I think you know it more than I do, not probably, for sure you do. The point I want to make is the language is the same. The Aramic language and Syriac language, maybe some variations. But then there was a process of Arabization. Why the people in Palestine speak Arabic? Because there was an Arabization process, meaning learning, shifting from one language to the other language. But that shift doesn't happen like when you shift from one language to the other, that doesn't mean the previous language goes away and a new one replaces it. It doesn't work this way. So that's why you see towns, if we see the slide again, you see towns called Ramallah, which is where the Palestinian Authority now. Ramallah is a combination word. It's Ram is an Aramic word, means elevation. Allah means God. So mixing between Aramic language and Arabic language came up with the name Ramallah. Same thing applies on Al-Majdal. Majdal is Aramic word. It means fortress. Tur means mountain. So you see Al-Majdal, Al-Tur. So AL is Arabic thing. So you see the mixing of languages, and there's a lot of examples like that. In fact, when we speak Arabic, there's two kinds of Arabic. Formal Arabic, Al-Fusha, and the regular dialogue, which is like the spoken language. When we talk, there's a lot of words we say in Arabic, quote unquote Arabic. We have no roots in Arabic. I didn't know where it's coming from. Like the word tuz, that's not an Arabic word. But many words are not connected. They came from, I found out later on, many of them. Some of them came from other sources, but many of them came from the Syrian language, which is Aramic language. And that's why our family language, that we speak at home, is a mix between Syrian, Aramic, and Arabic. The formal one, if you go and educate in universities, you have to speak formal. And like my father was an attorney, and his writing has to be formal. This is the writing of the Quran. And you need to know how we talk. And you can make mistakes by injecting other words in it, and you should not if you know what you're writing. So the bottom line is, that's a very important subject. My point from this slide is to show you that the process of Arabization was not like people coming from Arabia sitting in Palestine. Rather, it's people living in Palestine and subscribed to the Arabic culture, and part of it was the language. But even with that, you still see a lot of evidence from the language, spoken language prior to them, that is the Aramic. Now, how was political life before, in the beginning before the British came in and messed up everything? It doesn't mean it was perfect, but it was less perfect when the British came in. I said it's a plan. It's on the Balfour Declaration, and we're going to go through this document. And then the British came up with it, and they executed on it in a way that is inconsistent with the merit of the Balfour Declaration. And you'll find out why I'm saying that in a few minutes. How was life? This is the Middle East. That says here, Syria. That's Syria. That's Cyprus. That's Badiyat Sham. That's the desert between the Levant and Saudi Arabia coming at the south. In this map, you see Iraq, which is Mesopotamia, between the rivers. That's Euphrates and there's the other river. So that was, but what's most important in this map, and that's why I brought it in, is the railway system. This is a railway system that connects Europe to what now Turkey, Al-Hijaz expressway. And I think that's mentioned in the Lawrence of Arabia movie. That railway system goes down south to Saudi Arabia. Mecca is sitting here somewhere. Let's go back to the screen. And that's Hijaz. And why that's important? Because now that Hijaz is connected with this city. Here Damascus, Sham Sharif, they call it at the time. And here, Haifa. So they're connected through a city called Daraa. And that trip made a huge impact. It's about, by the way, between Damascus and Haifa, where my father was born and where I was born, it's about an hour and a half driving. It's not like, but at that time there was no borders. It was just the same country. So if somebody want to make a trip, and now with the railways, you could make it in a few hours that you can get there. So that railway system was the beginning of an economic growth in the area. It wasn't like, we'll tell you, Mark Twain, I think, he went to a trip to Palestine and he was in the desert. There's nothing like that, really. He probably walked in the desert. That doesn't mean the whole area is a desert. I mean, and then to take that statement and exploit it everywhere and say it everywhere too, and put it in the media and everywhere. Oh, it was a desert before. It wasn't a desert. That's a lie. And why they're lying? Because there's political intention behind the lie. So you take politics out of it, then you realize that if there was a desert, does that mean the whole area is a desert? Just the logic, the common sense. So that in mind, there was no desert. There was a desert here. Probably that's where Mark Twain was walking. I don't know where he's walking really. So, and there's a desert here, yes. I mean, you go to Texas, there's a desert next to Dallas. That does not make Dallas a desert. So with that in mind, there was connections, there were railways, there was a prosperity that's really promising in that area. And then things changed. I told you this is family history also. What you see here is my maternal grandfather. And this is my grandma, my aunt, and my other aunt. Now, this is taken in 1930s. From their ages, I was able to calculate the time. So 1930s give you some idea what happened early in the 20th century. Not exactly the period of time I was referring to, but they were in 1930s. Where this picture is taken, I don't know. Could be Damascus, but it could be Haifa. Why I know that? No other place. Because my aunt was born in Damascus. My other aunt was born in Haifa in 1934. So this picture probably, or 33, 32 and 33, something like that, really. But one of them is born in Haifa, one is born in Damascus. So when they took this picture, it is possible that they had the picture in Haifa because she was born in Haifa. But it could be also that they went back to visit to Damascus and was taken in Damascus. The way they are dressed, they look like on vacation. So probably this in Damascus. So then he decided, I told you these lands were connected and there's railways. And it's only like an hour and a half. By train, by maybe 3 hours. So he decided in his 20s to go from Damascus to Haifa to open, because Haifa became prosperous at the time, became a port on the Mediterranean. And we'll see from another slide, we'll show it why it became prosperous. So he wanted to establish a store, sell and trade, and he did that, and he established it really there in Haifa. And then a few years after, he had more kids, and that's my aunt, the other aunt. That's my uncle. I told you he's blue eyes. And that's my mom. So sadly, this is what a few years before he died. He got an infection, something on his nose, and he became septic, and sadly he died in 1943. So my mom, really, actually, I know she was 3 years old when he died. So this baby here, probably 2 years old. So probably he died 1 year after this picture. So that's the family he established in Haifa. Now you see some argument saying, oh, when somebody came to or British came in, they made it so prosperous, people immigrated from the neighboring countries, and they claim to be Palestinians and stuff like this, so I have to go back. Well, yeah, I mean, that's applicable to my mom's story. They came from Syria, but there was nothing called Syria at the time, or Palestine. I mean, people were going in and out. There's nearby cities. My father was from Haifa, and he grew up there and was born there. So this is the family. He had a very nice business until things start changing. So that's, again, the map I was referring to. And why things start changing? What you see here is the British Empire. Everything is on red is British. They colonized a lot of places. Most importantly, India, Australia, and also South Africa, apparently. So to get there, you have to use the Suez Canal. That's the shortest cut to all those colonies. So for the British Empire, the Suez Canal was an essential. It's water transportation. Again, this is 20th century. The airplanes and stuff had no importance there. Some importance, but was very, I don't think it's existed. Because this is before World War I. So all of it is water transportation. But to get to their colonies, all in red, they have to go through Suez Canal. So that's number one item. It became important. Why it became important? Because the relationship between England or British Empire and the Ottomans were good before World War I. In fact, they fought a war against the Russians. So they were allies. But later on, in World War I, for whatever reason, beside none of this topic with some, but they decided to side by the Germans. So now they are no longer allies. They were the enemies for Britain. The Ottomans became the enemies. Why that's important? Because of this. I can argue that this combustion engine is what changed the whole landscape in the Middle East. And why is that? For water transportation, the British ships were moving by steam engines. Steam engines. But that was inefficient. Somebody came up with the combustion engine based on diesel. More efficient, faster, stronger, can pull more heavy ships. And this ship is a Danish one. It was built in 1912. It run by the combustion engine, like engine which need diesel, oil. So that's a much stronger, and the British Army wanted to do more of that. And they need oil. Where is the oil? It was discovered in 2006 in Iran, or now Iran, called Persia, I think at the time it's called, and in Iraq. So now those areas which was not of importance became very important because they need to get their ships moving to control the seas. So now with the importance being placed on the oil and with them losing their Ottomans, they have to protect their interest. And as we know, as I mentioned earlier, the British don't like to fight with their soldiers. They are only 40 million people at the time, and they ruled 500 million people. How are they going to do it if they're going to fight with their own men? They won't do that, really. What they do is they go to places like India, and they say, oh, this is Muslim, this is Hindu, this is Sikh. Let's build relationship with each one group independently, even though those people were living together for hundreds of years. But now let's divide them around religious lines, pin them against each other, and use nationalism also. They use both religion and nationalism, depends on their interest. So they divide people and use them for their purpose. So with this, now the Ottomans are away, they are enemies, they want to fight them, they want to collapse them. So what they did is they went to the Arabs, now this is really the Arabs in the peninsula, the Sharif Hussein, and they told them, well, you know, why you are working with the Ottomans under their flag? You guys are Arabs. And they used Arab nationalism to entice the Arabs. Lawrence of Arabia, the movie, how they enticed those tribes to fight the Ottomans. They went to the Greek. So you are Greek, you are not Turkish. So you need to fight the Turkish. And they asked the Greek to fight the Ottomans. And also they went to India and they said, the Muslims, if you fight with us, we will give you your Muslim country, which is now Pakistan. So they generated 3 armies against the Ottomans, and they were able to really occupy Istanbul. And the Ottoman Empire dissolved. And now we have Turkey and we have other countries, and that the landscape changed completely in the Middle East. So that's what the British do. And what did they do also? Said, okay, we need somebody to guard this area, and we need also the influence of the Jewish people. They were influential in Europe, and if you read on the Balfour Declaration, you see the beginning of it to Rothschild. Why Rothschild, not Chaim Weizmann, for instance? Chaim Weizmann was a very influential individual who is a chemist. He became later on the first president of Israel. And he really was instrumental in the Balfour Declaration and trying to lobby, and did a lot of good things also to British government during the wartime. But with all his work, the letter was not addressed to him. It was addressed to the Rothschild, the banker. So that's one thing you can extract from this document. He wanted to give him the news. Would that mean they want him to support their war effort? And there are documents to show that the bankers were supporting Britain for their war effort. So that's part of the lobbying. And that was basically the intention of the British government, is to utilize the influence of the Jewish community, and I think prey on their pain and suffering in Eastern Europe, because there was a lot of injustice and massacres and killing against the Jews. And with that, they had ambitions they felt the only solution is establish their own national home. And the Jewish nationalism came about. And the British liked it. Let's use it, as we did in Saudi, in Arabia, Arab nationalism, Greek nationalism, Muslims, things in India. Then, well, let's use the Jews. And we can bring them to the Middle East, and we can use them to protect our interest in the oil in Iraq, as well as Persia. So they generated the whole wave, and they passed that promise, and we're going to read that document in a few minutes. So this is the war broke. This is 1914 when the World War I broke. And now they want to plan, because they realized the Ottoman Empire is going to fall. So they divided the area with an agreement called Sykes-Picot, a British and French government individuals. They went in and they started to divide the land into A, B, but the main thing is the A is Syria, the B is Jordan, going to Iraq, and this area was called Palestine. That's where the first meaning, and it's meant to be international at the time.